Ladies, welcome to this episode of the She is Extraordinary podcast. I'm sitting here with a friend and now a client, Heidi Farinas. Hi, Heidi.
Hi there. So glad to be here.
Heidi, I'm so excited to interview you. I have known Heidi for it's got to be 10 years. Is it 10 years?
Definitely 10 years.
That's
I
so
actually
good.
think it's more than 10 years. It's probably like 12.
Close to 15,
years.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Heidi is the founder of a company called So Impactful. And what's so impactful is they activate nonprofits to make an impact, because Heidi has had 2 decades of experience inside the nonprofit sector. And I've never interviewed anybody in that world. So when Heidi came on as a client inside Thrive Academy and we were chatting, and I already knew Heidi was pretty extraordinary, but I didn't know how much. So today, ladies, you're in for a real treat, because we're going to talk about what Heidi does and how it relates to what you can do in your business in two big things. One being relationships and the power of networking. And we're going to start there. But also the second thing is a mindset breakthrough that Heidi experienced even in these first, few days of working together. So Heidi, why don't you give the ladies just a little bit of a deeper background into your background so they have an understanding of kind of where you come from and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So I've spent the past 2 decades working as an executive director for a small nonprofit. Was recruited to found a foundation for a corporation and did several capital campaigns working in the education, library, social services sectors. And then finally, the past 5 years, I have worked as a donor engagement professional, raising millions of dollars. And in my last position, even leading a team, strategizing, teaching, and training them to help nonprofits really make a difference and a larger impact with their mission.
Yeah, that is just so good. And I had attended Bible study with Heidi for years and years. And I knew she was in nonprofit, but I had no idea what a powerhouse she is. Okay. So what I'm really, really excited about Heidi sharing is her approach to building, relating to people in order to build this impact. So let's break that down just a little bit, Heidi. Networking. Talk to us about the power of networking that you personally have experienced.
Yeah. Everyone during COVID that saw such a shift in their business and how they got clients and how they got donors, and even how nonprofits delivered services, how businesses delivered services. And I'll tell you, I've always known networking was important. And I always knew it was important to have authentic, genuine relationships. But during COVID specifically, I relied on my very dedicated, authentic network to help me grow. And I was able to get 90% of my new donors just from my closed network.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Okay, I'm going to unpack two things. A closed network, so I want to talk about that. But before that, I want to ask you, so many people out there, including myself, talk about the importance of really caring about people.
Mm-hmm.
And being yourself, being authentic. So, but can we open that a little bit and go deeper when you say that you had this, deep relationships and this closed network? How did you develop it, and how long did it take to develop?
Sure, sure. So we all know that God created us for relationship. So as Christians, we're called to enter into deep, authentic relationships with other people. So naturally, I did that with people just because that's who I am. And, I'm always searching for the God relationship or the God story. And in that, I noticed, just as a side effect, that I developed really deep relationships. And when you have deep relationships with people, you develop a trust. And, I had tried all sorts of networking, chambers of commerce, rotaries, community groups, networking events, you name it, I was there because I wanted everyone to know about my nonprofit, my mission, my vision. And where I found the most, for me, profound difference was in a closed networking group. And that closed networking group for me was full of people who were authentic and trusting and wanted a social relationship as well as a business relationship, and who went out every day. We call each other our sales force, and went out every day and found each other business.
Okay, so there's so much there. Okay, so let's first define closed network, because that's a term I had never heard of before. So what do you mean by that?
So closed network is when you go to a networking group, and first of all, you pay to be there. You have to be there. There's accountability. So they record attendance. They record how many referrals you're passing. They keep a record to make sure that everyone, as they like to say, is rowing the boat.
I love
Everyone's
that.
moving forward. The other thing that I think is key to success is that there's only one of each type of business in that networking group. So there's only one realtor, there's only one real estate attorney, there's only one plumber. So that when you're looking to get referrals for everyone else in the group, there isn't a competition.
Gotcha. So it sounds like a BNI model.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So for you and what you have done, that is more of a local business. When you represent that nonprofit, if it's Philly based or whatever, that makes sense to do that type of networking. Does closed networking work on a larger scale, on a global scale? Have you ever, experienced that?
Well, I have worked with on a global scale with BNI, and BNI is actually an international organization. And here's what I will say to you: two things. One, I had a global connection through my BNI. I'm actually working with a nonprofit in Peru right now that just has a heart for women, and that's who I am. And I'm so blessed and honored to be working with someone in Peru. The other thing is, though, when you work with your chapter, that's a beautiful thing. However, when you're a member of BNI, you have access to chapters around the world. So what I've seen done really well that I'm looking to tap into is that a consultant that's in BNI might go to an area of the country and find all of their ideal clients that are in BNI and teach them and network to them. For instance, a nonprofit consultant that might find all the nonprofits that are members of BNI in the Northwest section of our country, and then start having webinars and teachings to form relationships with those people.
Wow. Okay, cool. And this is not a plug for BNI, but it just happens to be
Yeah, it is not.
what you've experienced, and you love it. So that's good, because I personally love the accountability there, because what I found, and I have not been as active, especially after COVID, but what I found is there are people like me who love to connect and love to give out those referrals. And there's others that are just takers. But I think in the wash, it all works out, because they fade away and people stop giving them, referrals if they don't, do likewise. But okay, well, I want to get into some specifics. So I'm putting you on the spot here, but I know you can handle it. Okay, so can we get outside of the closed network, scenario, and let's talk about if you go to just a local networking group. Like I'm looking to tap into local women's business networking groups here in Charleston. So if you were in that group and I brought you on as my guest, okay, and you didn't know anybody, what would be your approach to someone at that event?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would do is, before the event, I would do my research and I would find out who's going to be in the room. And you can do that a number of ways. You can do that by maybe going on the website, and they might have women listed that are going to be attending. There might be a Facebook group where you can see everyone that's going to be in attendance. But when I enter into any situation, whether it be a fundraiser, a networking event, or a group of people, I like to know who's in the room, because you only have limited time
Mhm.
and you want to be strategic. And I think often that's when people say, I networked and I networked and I networked, but nothing came out of it. You know, when I talk about BNI groups, okay, you can't join just any BNI group. You have to be strategic. You have to make sure the people in the room are connected to your ideal clients or your ideal donors. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then once I get there, you know, you're open, you're friendly, you connect with people on a relational level. You're not a hard sell. You know, you ask them first about themselves and you always try to help. So my business is a giver's gain mentality, which is also BNI, but giver's gain. So if I can help you in any way, I'm going to tell you right off the bat. If you tell me you're from a nonprofit and you're having really a lot of trouble getting a grant or something like that, I'm going to ask you about that. And I genuinely care. It's not just a technique. And people know, right? People know when you're authentic and you care. And then at the event, always try to get their information because you can give out a million business cards, but never get a reply back. So my goal is to get someone to say, hey, thank you so much for the information. You're really an expert in this area. I would like you to email me, or I would like you to call me. Hey, my favorite is pre-COVID. Let's meet up for coffee.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So that's so good. And I love, me, everything I do is strategic. You can't just go willy-nilly. So I love that. So as you review the list to the extent that it's available before you get in the room, I assume that you're targeting maybe your top 5 people that you want to find. Am I right about that?
Exactly, exactly. So what does that look like? That looks like the people who are connected to your ideal client or donor for nonprofits. So let's use a nonprofit, for example, and we can use a business too, but a nonprofit, who are they looking for? They're looking for banks because banks give out grants. And there's a whole reason for that. And if anyone wants to learn about that, I would be happy to teach. So I'm looking for a banker. I'm looking for an attorney because nonprofits go to attorneys to form. If I were I'm just trying to think. If I were a contractor, a home improvement contractor, I'd be looking for the painters and the HVAC. What do they call them? HVAC installers, right? Because those are your number one referral partners, and that's who you're looking for.
That's so good. That's so good. So in the way of business, let's take me, for example, just to make this example, because I know there's a bunch of coaches. So if you're a coach, whatever your industry, you know who is connected to your ideal client, right? If you know your ideal client, which ladies, do you know your ideal client? Okay, so my ideal client is an established, seasoned entrepreneur. Maybe not in business for years, but she's reached a certain point in her business where she's at 6 figures, maybe even multi 6 figures, and now she's looking to scale. So with that, who am I going to be looking for? Let's think about that. Well, who am I going to be looking for? I'm going to be looking for, those ladies who are involved, the ladies involved in the leadership of a networking event. They're probably going to be that person or know persons that do, because let's face it, the ones that are successful are the ones that are doers. Do you ever hear that adage, Heidi, that if you want something done, and give it to a busy woman?
True. So, I mean, is that not true of us all?
We're multitaskers. So that's a little bit makes focus a little bit difficult for some, but yeah, we get it all done. So I just want the ladies, as you're thinking, what I want you to do is I want you to spend time like pausing even this right now and say, okay, wait a minute. Now, who would I be looking for? Who would be, as Heidi said, a great referral partner? What industry are they in? Or who are they? Think about that demographically and psychographically, like what are they doing? Where do they show up? And that's where you need to be. All right. So on this networking thing, let's change to one more thing. You said a powerful word. It's the T word, trust.
That's right. Here's the difference. I have not had a cold call in 3 years.
In how many years?
3 years.
3 years. Wow.
Because, and not that there's anything wrong with cold calling. My first job in the nonprofit world was calling donors of my college saying, "Hi, I'm Heidi. I have the same major as you. Will you give me money?" That was literally my first fundraising job when I was 20 years old. So there's nothing wrong with cold calling. Is it effective? Is it effective? The best way to get a client is going to be that referral. So that referral comes with someone saying, Judy, you saying, "Hey, I know this nonprofit. I'm going to do an email introduction. And in that introduction, I'm going to say, this is my friend Heidi. She has many years experience, blah, blah, blah." And then you make that, that referral. But here's the thing in networking, if there isn't trust, if you didn't trust me, Judy, you're not going to give me to your friends and your family and your coworkers and your clients because you don't trust me.
Right. So I love that point. Just like you wouldn't have jumped into the academy unless you trusted me. And we'll talk about what amazingness happened in the past just couple of days, the first week inside. But this issue of trust, outside of networking, it's about building credibility and building your authority wherever you are online, in your marketing assets, all of that. So how can you most effectively build trust when you're just like a face-to-face or virtual networking type opportunity? I mean, do you brag yourself up?
Not at all. So what I would say is, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, be authentically interested in people and in their business. Because if the first thing you say to me is, "Hi, I'm Jim and I want to be your plumber."
And you're like, "Goodbye, Jim."
About me? Jim, you don't know anything. I don't even want you to be my plumber, Or if you said to me, "Hey, Heidi, your business sounds so interesting. Tell me about you. I want to learn about you. And I want to learn about the people you serve." And you know what that does? When Jim asked me about who I serve, that makes me think he cares about my clients. So you know what I'm going to do if one of my clients needs a plumber? I'm going to say, "Jim cares about people." And I'm going to refer them to Jim. And part of networking, I know a one-time event, it's hard, but if you're in a closed networking group and you're seeing people week after week, is building that trust, building that relationship. I just think relationship is so important. And authenticity, right?
Yeah.
I'm very real. I'm very real. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. That's just who I am. Maybe it's from outside of Philadelphia, but being authentic with people and being real.
And see, I really think that is so simple and yet so powerful. And isn't the simple often what is powerful? Because when I was in my 20s, in my first sales jobs, and even as a lawyer, and they'd want me to go to these events, I hated it. I hated it because I felt like I was there to find business. And I totally missed it. Like if anybody told me, I totally missed it. But I don't think anybody told me about go there and connect with people. Like really care, and it makes a difference. And what Heidi's saying, and you can hear in her voice, ladies, that she's done this a lot. Like she knows what she's saying. She starts out saying, "Hey, tell me about your business and who the heck do you serve?" And that's what I say. I really care. And it's so different from the DMs that at least I'm seeing in my inbox, when at the first hello, they're either trying to pitch or they're asking you silly questions. "How are you doing today?" It's like, okay, this is just such a stupid way. That's not even a relationship. I can tell where this is going. So, ladies, all that to say, when you meet people, just love on them and don't put any pressure on it. Because if all you do, which is a huge all you do, if all you do is open your heart to them and they see you in that way, wow, that is the foundation for a great relationship. Do you agree, Heidi?
I absolutely do. And, as Christians, what does God call us to do? That's my life verse, is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor And as I move in these circles of networking groups with very few Christians, I really feel called to a mission of people seeing how I love God, but also how I love them. And it makes a huge difference. I have people say to me, "You are so different." And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not different. But I
You're
think
so humble, right? You're humble.
I'm different. But it's that authenticity and that trust and that genuine care that I feel for other people. And, that's kind of one of the things, like when you're looking for a group or something like that, is it there? Is that there? Is that desire for relationship and that genuine caring community, is it there? But then is there that accountability, right? Because grace and truth,
Yep, there you go.
love.
Mm.
So you have the grace and the love and the kindness and the trust, but then is there the truth? Are you rowing the ship with everyone else? I think it's huge to say, is everyone rowing the ship?
That is a really good one. I love it. Last thing I want to say, actually two more things on this point, and then we'll move to mindset. I loved how in the notes prior to this, you said, in the networking, what you do is and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I want to go deeper on it now, training your network to be like a sales force for you. And to some, that might seem like, ooh, that's that ugly L word, the leverage. You're leveraging your relationships. And somehow that feels manipulative. I want you to unpack that for our listeners.
So I think it starts with the trust. We trust each other. We have an authentic desire to help each other grow when you're networking and all those. When you get those things with people, they want to help you grow. So when they move into that space of wanting to help you grow, you have to be able to teach them. And I have to be honest, when I really started hardcore networking 5 years ago, I had no idea how to teach someone to get me a quality referral for my ideal client. So when you move into that Salesforce space and you train people, you need to know in your mind, this is what I'm asking for. And you know what? I love when people tell me exactly what they want. I know that you, Judy, want women that want to grow their business to a 6 or 7 figure. That makes it so clear in my brain of who I would refer you to. And I think that's important. The other thing I would say is you don't do a lot of selling to people in the room. And here's why. There might be 50 people in the room. Do you want to sell to 50 people? Or do you want to sell to the contact sphere of 50 people, which can be, I think the average person knows 350 people. So who do you want to sell to? And just remembering that as you're training your sales force. And then also telling them how to make an introduction. This is the best way to introduce someone to me. I like email introductions. It gives me a chance when I'm copied on it to jump in, thank the person who made the introduction, and I have a contact. I can explain who I am and ask for a meeting. Some people like phone calls, but know all of these things ahead of time so you know how to train your sales force.
Oh, that's so good. Wow, that is so, so good. All right, on the last question of networking, I suspect that there are some out there saying, wait a minute, this networking thing takes a while and I need like a client today. So is this really worth doing? The answer is an obvious yes, but I would love you had mentioned you had a story about an amazing donor. I'd love to kind of talk
I
to
would love to share that story. This is one of my favorite stories. The answer is yes, it takes a while. Now, here's what it takes a while for. And I'm going to use the nonprofit world as an example. If I joined a networking group today, I went to a speed networking group, could I get a $50 donor that day? Absolutely. What takes a while, and I believe it's 18 to 24 months, is to get that billionaire dollar donor. And I have a story, I was part of a group for 2.5 years, and I couldn't tell you how many times I said to them, if you have a friend, family member, or associate that has a foundation, I would love to talk to them. Well, it took 2.5 years, same group of people heard the commercial several times, for one of them to come to me and say, my friend has a foundation. He is worth a lot of money. And it turned out to be, he was a billionaire.
Wow.
And, you know, and I want to introduce him to you. But, you know, that goes back to the trust, you know, because when we introduce people in our lives to other people, we want to know that they're going to be treated well and that we're introducing them to something of quality. You know, in the nonprofit world, a quality nonprofit that does good work. In the business world, someone that's dependable and reliable. But yeah, that's my story, how I gave the same commercial for 2.5 years, but it paid off.
Yeah. And you maintained those relationships. That was the important thing. So, you know, a couple things happened. Either they didn't fully trust you enough to pass along this, like, I guess, important person, right? This influential person, or they, you know, for whatever reason, this is why, ladies, repetition is so important, because sometimes in the moment we can, you know, something can pass our ears and it doesn't penetrate for whatever reason, stuff going on in our life, you know, who knows, but never give up. That is such a beautiful story. I love that. All right, let's talk a little bit about mindset, because how do I want to say this? Heidi jumped into the academy a week and a half ago. And just over a week ago, we had our initial one-on-one strategy session. And one of the things that Heidi said, and it was kind of a light bulb moment for her, was she's like, wait a minute. Why is it that I can close, like in the donor world, at 70%? That's my close rate. But here as an entrepreneur, I'm only at 10%. What is it? So I'd love you to tell your side of that story and what was your revelation in that regard?
So I have to say I was pretty exasperated, and I was almost 90 days into my business, which I've heard is kind of that point where, you know, you're feeling like, oh, can I do this? Can I not? And I'm looking at my numbers, having talked to 30 nonprofits in 3 months, and I have 3 clients, and feeling a little discouraged, honestly. I was very successful in the nonprofit world. If I spoke with someone, there was a 70% chance that they would become a donor. And being knocked down to that 10% was really hard. But there was something that Judy said to me, and it was my why. And the space that I had gotten myself into, this hamster wheel that I had gotten myself into, was the pressure. Like, oh, my husband believed in me when I left my nonprofit and I was obedient to God. I have to make money. I have to close an agreement. I have to. And Judy, you remind me of my why. The reason I started So Impactful was to serve as many small to medium nonprofits as possible and teach them my unique methods. So when I kind of flipped that mindset of, okay, I want to serve as many people as possible, and then also recognizing my value and my uniqueness, honestly, I'm a very humble person, but I do bring something unique to the table. You know, that I was able to enter into a meeting, having never closed somebody on the first day, and sitting face to face with an executive director, explaining to her what I could do for her organization. And then without any kind of remorse or shame or guilt or all of those things, because I know that I'm serving, say, this is how much my fees are, and I would really like to take your organization to the next level. And right then and there, she hired me.
Wow. And that was what, 2 days after you and I had our first one-on-one.
It was.
That is amazing. And
Mhm.
so, wow, that is just so powerful, because, and it's a testament that the only person in our way is ourselves. Like, you had this mental block. I'm an amazing donor getter, but ooh, I can't charge that, or wow, wait a minute, I can't like put me out there right away, or even just the way you had told me, the way that you had gotten donations before, donors, was a multi-step process. So when I introduced the idea that when you sit down with someone, ask for the business right then and there, and let them tell you that they need a proposal to take to the board or whatever. So that is just so great. I love, and I really want to go deeper on this. I love that when you took the pressure off of yourself, number one, and number two, realized who you are in Christ and why you left your somewhat cushy job, right? Nice paycheck to do this, then it all comes together. So talk about that, the pressure aspect, because I know there've got to be many women listening that are feeling that pressure right now.
When you leave a job that's almost a six-figure income, just based on obedience to God, there's a lot of pressure just right there, that, oh my gosh, I'm so used to a paycheck, but now I don't have a paycheck. And, my daughter has to go to college and we need a car. And, so that pressure, but also it was all internal. You should know that. An internal pressure to succeed and to be looked at as successful, because lots of people are watching me. All my colleagues and friends and associates, they've all told me, you're going to be amazing. You have such unique experience. You can do this. Mm-hmm. It actually created a lot of internal pressure for me. And then to add to that, the fact that my husband, who's so amazing and so supportive, believes in me 100%, that actually became an internal pressure for me.
You have to produce now. You have to prove him right.
But, in the nonprofit world, this was my light bulb. I was so successful because it was all about serving other people. That's my heart. That's one of the unique things that God has placed in me, is that I'm highly motivated to help other people and very successful in that role. So when I remembered that the reason I started was not to make money and not to show everyone I could do it and all those things, but it was to teach many nonprofits how to raise money and fund their mission, and even strategic planning. That was that light bulb moment that I said, of course I can do this. And it motivated me to work even harder.
I love that. So ladies, if you're having issues with having sales conversations or even networking and beginning that first hello, understand, when you truly approach it from your heart, which I've never spoken to a woman and she hasn't said, I did this because I want to help. So let's remember that. Let's focus on that and not the, oh my goodness, things aren't happening as quickly. I do want to say this, 3 months, the fact that you have 3 clients, that's a huge brava. And it's a testament to your beautifully, nurtured network, because sometimes it takes a little while longer than that. I mean, we look at people like Rachel Hollis and Marie Forleo and so many others, Mel Robbins, and we say, oh my goodness, they're an overnight success. They're like 10 years in the making. So we really have to be realistic. And that's another reason why we can't compare, because someone else's journey is not our journey. And so we really need to say, Lord, where am I going? Where do you have me going? And I'm going to enjoy the journey. Just like Abraham, God said, go here. Where? Just go. And I'll tell you the details later. So I love that. The last thing I want to touch on is, you mentioned your methodology. And we've said your name of your company, So Impactful, but so is SOW, as in sowing seeds. So I just, we're thinking that as we're saying it, but they might be seeing SO, it's SOW. So I would love for you to share just a bit of what happened on the one-on-one strategy session with you and me, when there was a little bit of an aha moment there, I think too, as far as, hey, Heidi, you've got your own methodology. It's proprietary. This is like gold.
Yeah, I think that was a great one-to-one.
Thank you.
So I think that what I said to you was, Judy, I don't have anything down on paper. I've been so busy serving clients that basically I have a way that I know that I do things. And when I meet with my clients, I mean, I definitely have an organized way of doing it, but it's basically a brain dump upon them. And, I never looked at it as unique. And when you said to me, you bring a very unique perspective to the table, I really started reflecting upon that. And here's the unique perspective I bring to the table. And, now that I think about it, this is totally applicable in business also. I have never asked anyone for money ever. I ask people for a partnership. I help people to realize their passions and their dreams. And I show them how their money can be a tool to make that impact. And that's just one part of the SO method. So in my experience, what you need to truly activate and fund your mission, starting with the S, is a strategic plan. And you'd be surprised how many organizations don't have that. They have this grand vision. Mm-hmm. But have they mapped out their programs? Have they mapped out what they need and how much it's going to cost to get there? So that's what we start with. And then the O, organizational activation. And that means sitting down with your staff and your board members and your volunteers and teaching them how to share and spread awareness about your organization. So many people are afraid because they don't want to ask people for money. But here's the thing, if you're on a board of a nonprofit, you love what they do and you are so passionate, you want to share the good work they're doing. And just teaching board members, volunteers, staff members how to activate their contact sphere, what to say, how to follow up. And then the W is for winning donors. And you know how you do that? Through everything this podcast is about, relationships.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And I love how, the so impactful. I was like, just use the so. Let's fit in the SOW. And look, it's perfect. It makes perfect sense. Isn't God so good? Because to me, it's not a coincidence that you came up with that, because God planted that in you to say, wow, this is what I want, right? I mean, I'm sure you have a story about how you named your business. Right?
I was just going to, it's amazing because I had a different person in the very beginning coaching me who wasn't a Christian. And I was adamant that my name of my business needed to be biblical. And he had no idea, couldn't even begin to understand why it needed to be biblical. But for me, that's who I am. I am a Christian. And then when you look at sowing, that's what I do every day in my life, in my personal life, in my spiritual life, and in my business life. I sow seeds. And it took me forever to come upon that word. So, I knew I wanted to say impactful so that I could speak to the pain of nonprofits and donors. And you want to be impactful. You want to leave a legacy.
That's everything, right? Yeah.
Right. So when I came upon so impactful, I never dreamed it would be an acronym for my very unique method. And you helped me realize that. And, even walking into that meeting last week, where I had that whole new mindset of, I'm unique. I bring something to the table here. But still being humble, right? Because I think I'm a pretty humble person. But having that mindset change really helped me to be able to take that next step and close the deal right then and there.
That's a beautiful testament. I mean, that is a huge win, a multi-$1,000 win that is inspiring so many other ladies inside the academy. They're just like blown away. And I actually referenced a beautiful message you sent to me yesterday in today's training inside my Curate Your Signature Offer event. I hope you don't mind. I didn't even mention your name, but it was just so amazing. Such a beautiful message that Heidi sent me yesterday, which was like, Judy, you're amazing. And I don't feel that, but see, I will accept it. And I will say, only by Christ's grace and his anointing and his equipping Am I able to do these things? Am I able to kind of pull things together? And I, tongue in cheek, I will say, well, I know why your last coach wasn't helpful, among other things, that he was a non-Christian, but it was a he. You don't go to men.
You know what? I absolutely agree. And, nothing against men. I have a husband. I love him very much.
Great guy, yeah.
You have 3 boys. I love your 3 boys. But there's something about being a female and being an entrepreneur that I knew you got it. You got the fears I was facing. You got where I was as a mom, where I was in my career. And I feel it makes a difference to have a Christian woman coach. Not to say other people can't help you, but right now, for a time such as this, that's why I'm here.
Wow, just beautiful. You are my ideal client, Heidi. I'm so excited. All right, so now we're nearing the end. We're going to end with my favorite question. This is called the She is Extraordinary podcast. So I would love for you to share with our listeners an extraordinary woman of any age, alive or not, and tell us why she's extraordinary.
So I would say that I had a teacher in high school. I was never part of the gifted program, but she was the gifted teacher. And she saw in me something, having never tested into the gifted program, and she pulled me into her programming and just said, hey, on your lunch hour, come and hang out with us. And she instilled in me things like, you can go to college. I know no one in your family's gone to college. You're smart enough. You're actually really smart. You've never tested, but you're gifted in your own unique way. And honestly, I never knew she was Christian, but I believe she was, because she expressed joy. She just filled her students. And that was the woman who first made me think, oh, I'm a leader.
Wow.
I could go to college. I can be anything, because she filled me with the tools and the mindset to do it.
Wow, I love it. I love it. My favorite teacher was my 3rd grade teacher. And I invited her to my wedding when I was 22, and she came, and we were both crying because the last time I saw her was in 3rd grade. And what was I, like 7 or 8? And then I see her at 22. She was that impactful in my life. God rest her soul. Beautiful woman. But anyway, Heidi, I know this is going to be a super popular episode. We've covered so much. So thank you so much for joining me today, Heidi, and sharing so much of your heart.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of the Academy, to be a part of this awesome community of women that I just can't believe the way God is moving with this Academy, and, learning to do the impossible.
Here you go. Pursue the impossible. I'd love to give you a high five and a hug, sister. Well, thank you, Heidi. And ladies, thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And if you would, please take the time to leave us a rating and a review, because your feedback really, really matters. So once again, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.